My husband, 29, and I, 27, had been married for 4 years, and together for a total of 6 years. However, the past couple of years have been tough for us. My husband struggled with expressing his feelings, often bottling them up until they eventually erupted. I had always tried to encourage open communication, but over time, I grew weary and simply let him be. Our marriage had deteriorated to the point where we felt more like roommates than passionate partners. We slept in the same bed, but intimacy had become rare. Arguments became a constant part of our interactions, and they revolved around issues that had never been problematic before. I found myself questioning whether our relationship would survive this rough patch. The situation worsened during the pandemic when we were both constantly at home, working remotely. The proximity and constant interaction made it challenging for us to maintain harmony. We unintentionally got in each other's way frequently, which added to the mounting tension between us. When the pandemic finally ended, I was thrilled to return to work. The opportunity to meet my coworkers in person again filled me with excitement, and I realized how much I had missed them during those isolating times. After the first week back at work, we decided to celebrate our survival and find a bar to socialize. The gathering included 4 of my female coworkers and 2 of my male coworkers, one of whom I had a close working relationship with. We often collaborated on projects, and he was known for his fun and gentle personality. On our way to the bar, I offered a ride to that male coworker who preferred not to drive due to his tendency to overindulge in drinks when at bars. Once at the bar, I was thoroughly enjoying myself, relieved to be away from the constant arguments at home. The male coworker I was close to at work had a natural charm, and people sometimes jokingly referred to us as husband and wife. That light-hearted label subconsciously drew me closer to him during the evening. Throughout the 2 years of working together, we had innocently flirted, but neither of us had ever considered taking things further than just playful banter. However, that night, something felt different. As we spent more time together, the connection seemed to deepen, and I couldn't help but feel a growing attraction. Deciding to drop off my male coworker at his house on the way to my own, I began to contemplate the complexities of my emotions. When my coworker invited me to his house for more drinks after our night out, I was torn. I knew my husband would be waiting for me at home, but the thought of the fun ending was disheartening. Something about my coworker's masculine presence and the vibrant atmosphere he provided drew me in. Going back home to my husband felt like transitioning from a lively party vibe to a somber funeral vibe, so I decided to seize the moment and enjoy myself a little longer before facing reality. As we arrived at his place, I didn't anticipate anything sexual happening. After all, I had been there before without any such occurrences. We continued to drink and put on some music, dancing carefree in each other's company. Eventually, we settled down on the couch, and the conversation turned to my struggling marriage. Both of us were tipsy, and the emotional vulnerability of the moment led us to kiss and embrace, crossing a boundary that should have never been approached. Even in that intimate moment, a voice in the back of my mind knew what we were doing was wrong. I was married, and he knows it, but in that instant, neither of us seemed to care. There was an intoxicating allure to the excitement of the forbidden. It had been so long since I had felt such desire, and I was carried away by the moment. However, as I drove home alone, the effects of the alcohol wore off, and guilt consumed me. I couldn't believe I had allowed myself to betray my husband's trust. The remorse was suffocating, gnawing at my conscience. I felt sick and overwhelmed by the weight of my actions. Arriving home, I headed straight for the shower, hoping to wash away the guilt that clung to me like a shadow. Strangely, despite the guilt, I slept peacefully for the first time in ages. It was as if, for a brief moment, I had scratched an itch that my husband hadn't even acknowledged. The guilt followed me throughout the weekend, and I tried to compensate by doing things with my husband, hoping to ease the burden of my transgressions. The following Monday at work, I couldn't shake off the awkwardness around my coworker. Despite my guilt and the realization that what we were doing was wrong, he had a way of making me feel comfortable with his masculine presence and warm smile. However, as the day progressed, we couldn't help but fall back into our touchy-feely behavior. Eventually, we found ourselves at his apartment again, and this time, we stayed longer than before, unable to resist the pull of our illicit attraction. The guilt continued to haunt me, a heavy cloud hanging over my head wherever I went. This behavior was not like me at all, and the fact that I was now sneaking around and betraying my marriage weighed heavily on my conscience. I used to be someone who criticized others for engaging in similar actions, making my own actions all the more difficult to bear. I despised myself for being so weak and reckless. Finally, I gathered the courage to tell my coworker that we had to end this affair. He agreed, but being around him afterward only made the longing and conflict worse. My mind was constantly filled with thoughts of being with him, despite the knowledge that it was completely wrong. The situation became even more complicated because we still had to work together, making it challenging to escape the temptation. As if the guilt and inner turmoil weren't enough, my husband surprised me by expressing a desire to try marriage counseling, a step he had never considered before. In our therapy session, my husband bared his soul, expressing a depth of love for me that I had never experienced from him before. He took full responsibility for his role in our marital problems and wholeheartedly committed himself to saving our marriage. The weight of my ongoing affair crushed me, and I could no longer bear the deception. I found myself breaking down, confessing everything to my husband in the presence of the therapist. Tears flowed freely as I admitted to my betrayal, explaining that the affair had started during a period of difficulty in our marriage but was not the reason for our problems. After the confession of my affair, I expressed to my husband the depth of my regret and sorrow for betraying our marriage. I assured him that I had fully rededicated myself to our relationship and was committed to making things right. To ensure no further contact with the coworker, I immediately requested a transfer to a different project group, effectively eliminating any chance of being around him. Within 4 months, I even secured an entirely new job to further distance myself from the past. During this time, we attended therapy sessions to work through our issues. I implemented an open device policy, allowing my husband complete access to my phone and other devices at any time, without needing to explain or question his actions. It was a difficult journey, but we persevered, emerging on the other side stronger than ever. It truly felt like we had moved past the devastating event, entering a new phase in our relationship. However, the problem resurfaced 3 months ago during an industry conference in our city. My husband accompanied me, as we both shared similar professional fields. At the conference, I was thrilled to see a speaker I had admired for a long time. After her talk, she remained to engage with attendees, and I was eager to approach her and express my admiration. But as I got closer, I noticed that my ex-coworker was among the people already engaged in conversation with the speaker. I told my husband we should go get lunch, but he was understandably confused because he knows how much I admire the speaker. He kept encouraging me to go up there, but I kept deflecting and saying I was hungry and would rather eat. However, my husband seemed confused by my sudden change of plans, as he knew how much I admired the speaker and had been eager to see me approach her. I kept deflecting his suggestions and insisted on getting lunch instead. But my husband wasn't giving up that easily. He persisted in asking why I didn't want to approach the speaker. Feeling cornered, I finally revealed the truth. I promised my husband that I would never be around my ex-coworker again, and seeing him engaged with the speaker made me anxious and uneasy. The news hit my husband hard, and he looked visibly hurt as if he had been punched in the gut. We went home, and he became unusually quiet for several days. We eventually talked about it, and my husband admitted that he had never seen my ex-coworker before and had never wanted to. Witnessing him in person made the affair real in a way that mere words could not convey. I fully understood my husband's feelings, and I felt deeply remorseful for causing him this pain. I offered anything to make it up to him: couples therapy, counseling, anything that might help us heal and move forward. My husband initially assured me that he was fine, but his behavior began to change shortly after that. To my surprise and dismay, my husband started making slightly racist remarks. When a crime was reported on the news, he would make comments about the race of the people involved. This behavior was completely out of character for him, and it troubled me deeply. It was as if the pain caused by my affair had manifested in a harmful way, turning him into someone I hardly recognized. My husband's behavior was completely out of character. He had never shown any signs of racism before. In fact, it used to upset him greatly. However, after my confession about the encounter with my black ex-coworker, his comments had become increasingly racist, leaving me shocked and uncomfortable. When I finally mustered the courage to address the issue, he brushed off my concerns, further exacerbating the tension between us. 2 days ago, he crossed a line by using the N-word, and that was the breaking point for me. I confronted him in a heated argument, realizing that his behavior was a result of seeing my coworker, who is black, at the conference. My husband had no idea what my ex-coworker looked like until then, and the encounter seemed to trigger these disturbing comments. However, when I expressed my discomfort with his racist remarks, he retorted with accusations, saying that I was taking my ex-coworker's side over his. This response infuriated me because standing against racism didn't mean I was choosing anyone's side over my husband's. I couldn't tolerate such prejudice and hatred, and it left me questioning our marriage. We started sleeping in different bedrooms, and the strain on our relationship was palpable. I knew my husband wasn't inherently racist, but the pain I caused seemed to have twisted his emotions into something unrecognizable. The situation was dire, and we had reached a crossroads. We discussed the possibility of separating for a while to reassess our feelings and rediscover the reasons why we were together in the first place. The idea was to take 2 months apart and then reevaluate whether divorce was the right decision